Hello and welcome to the Whole Elephant. Thanks for being here. I love doing this journey with you guys, trying to see life from different perspectives, understand people's journey, both in what they do in life and how they live on a spiritual level. My guest today is Amy Nanette Glin. She's a longtime certified life coach, working with creatives and such, and a first time author. Her book, G.O.D, is the Galactic Order of Demonstration, is a fictional novel that basically asks the question, what if Jesus came and didn't exactly give us the book we were supposed to be given? And it's a wild story from there. So obviously we had a chat about the book, and also some of this episode became like a free coaching session for me. So you get to you get to hear about my creative troubles in this one as well. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the chat. Hi, Amy. It's so nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to
Our
talk with you
uh,
today.
our mutual friend Barbara Deutsch, who's been on this podcast before as a guest. She emailed me and said, "I have a friend who came out with a book. I think you're gonna dig the book." And just reading the description of the book, I was all in. It's wild, and I love just the description of it. I was like, "Here we go. This is. I need to reach out because this is gonna be a fun one."
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, it was fun to write. And yeah, and a lot of it is it's kind of semi-autobiographical, which I'm realizing is important to talk about as
Yeah,
time goes on.
you've had a lot of different gigs in your life coaching and stuff going on now. Where do you find yourself today? What are you up to nowadays?
Well, today I'm working. I have a life coaching business, a trauma-informed life coaching business, and I am working on promoting the book. And those are
Mhm.
the two things. And I recently moved to Portland, Oregon, which I am just enamored with. And so I'm exploring Portland.
Yeah, enamored with Portland in what aspects? I know there's a lot of like quirky little things to find in Portland. What do you love about it?
Uh, I love all the water, actually. I love and that there's a river that separates the east and west of the city.
Mm,
And when I drive around here, it's almost like there's this bird, like a fountain comes out of my heart and like comes bursts out of the top of my head of excitement of like rainbow colors. It's kind of funny. And also when I first stayed here for 3 months, I was house sitting, and it was in Southeast. So Portland is separated by quadrants of, Southeast, Northeast, Southwest,
mm,
Northwest. And I was in Southeast near Hawthorne Street, and people are out on the street all the time. They're just walking
mm.
around and having a great time. And like even during this horrendous ice storm we had, where the roads were solid ice because they only plow the main roads here because it's so rare that they have snow or ice. People are like sliding down the street, falling down outside my window, and but the people are like Portland's like alive. It's the blood that
Yeah,
people are kind of like the blood that runs through the veins of a body. The people are
right.
like the blood that runs through the veins of the city, and I just love it. It's just there's just so much to do here, and it's just so fun.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up pretty much my whole life in LA, and last summer I went to London, and London is very much like that too, where when people get off work, they're hitting the pubs are spilling out into the streets. There's so many people hanging out together. And in LA, if you want to hang out with friends, you get off work and you drive 45 minutes in traffic and then park in a stale parking garage. And you know what I mean? Go to an indoor, air conditioned place. Like there isn't that communal aspect here. And in London, I just loved it.
There really isn't. I lived in LA for 20 years, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. And you drive 45 minutes and you've gone maybe 3 miles.
That's true. That's true. I want to get into the book, but first I want to know why a book? Did you always fancy yourself a writer? There's so much in the book that clearly comes from your life, things you've learned. There's stuff in the book to me that clearly is the stuff that you probably work with people in life coaching and stuff like that. There's dialogue in the book that very much feels like a TED Talk type of situation.
Oh,
There's so
wow.
much depth and truth in there. Why, like, what was the decision to make it a fiction novel?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that I'd say, telling well, one thing that I wanted to do in the book, I've read a lot of self-help books and a lot of books that tell you how to do it, and, coaches and, nonfiction stuff along those lines. And a lot of them tend to be preachy
Mm,
and don't actually offer, many of them tell you what the problem is, but don't necessarily give you steps for the solution.
yeah.
And I wanted this book to be a journey that people go on with Nanette, the main character. And
Mhm.
so as she discovers these things, readers can discover it as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
like on that journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was kind of interesting to me because just the concept of we need to get into what the book's about before we talk about this probably. Um,
Also, the
but
title, it's called G.O.D.
yeah, well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
G.O.D, which stands for the Galactic Order of Demonstration. Let's just talk about the book. So the idea is that God, G.O.D, is not what we think it is. It's more of a, as you describe it, an interactive field to play in. And God has a leader called Lord who has a son called Chip. And Chip is who came down as Jesus as we know it,
Yes.
but got drunk on the Sabbath or Passover, got drunk at the Last Supper, and instead of delivering the manuscript he was supposed to, lost it. And the bad people, ego, got it, rewrote it, and that became our Bible. That's the is that a good is that a good setup?
That's a pretty good setup. Yeah. Yeah,
and
that pretty much covers it. Yeah.
and so they are trying to get their truth back into the world the way that they want them, and they need a publicist to do that, and that's where Nanette comes in. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Did I miss anything important that needs to be part of the
Well,
synopsis?
the only thing that is important in that scenario is that there was a bet between GOD and EGO, and EGO stands for the Elite Global Order.
Yeah.
And the bet was they played a game of Earthopoly thousands of years ago, and the bet was whoever had more souls in their court by a particular time wins control of the planet
Right.
or stewardship of the planet. And so that's what prompted Cretan of Ego to steal the book and write, and distribute it as the Bible, leaving out all the important pieces of how this earthly container operates.
Yeah. Um Clearly I feel like you had to have had some kind of Christian religion background upbringing to be able to write something like this because it's there's just a lot of the structures and stuff that I feel like, or has it all been adjacent for you? What has your religious upbringing been like?
Well, I was raised Jewish. I was bat mitzvahed
Uh-huh.
um, when I was 13, but it was secular Judaism. And my mother, I was raised by a single mom. She wasn't really religious. I think that we went to Sunday school and temple because it's what you do, not because she had necessarily strong beliefs in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
And I don't remember God being talked about in my house when I
Interesting.
was a kid. Yeah. God, but we lit candles on Friday night and said the prayers. And but yeah, God wasn't really talked about as I
Mm,
was being raised.
interesting.
But
Yeah,
I was
that's
always,
go
oh,
ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but I was always more interested in the things I couldn't see than the things I could see. And I never understood why I had to go to school. Who are these people telling me what I have to do in my life, like all that kind of stuff. I really never got it. It didn't make sense to me from very early on.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I mean, I'm coming from a very Christian upbringing background, and I still work at a church right now, but I've certainly gone through a period over the last 8 years or so of like just questioning everything, right? And so it's really interesting to me that you wrote the book not with that perspective, but I'm reading it through the lens of that perspective. And I've had the thoughts of what if what if they wrote the wrong stuff down? what, what if this is not contain, what if the Bible does not actually contain everything that I need to know? Coming at that from, I went 30 plus years believing that it did. This book was a really interesting read.
Oh, yeah, and what was there something that started you on the path of questioning? Did something happen that started you on the path of questioning, or what was that?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, I have a quote from the book that I was going to bring up, because I read this quote and I was like, this is it. This is in Christianity right now. I don't know if you know, but it's kind of a hot term right now, deconstruction, right? Like kind of everyone in my generation is going through deconstruction where you're sorting through all the things you've been taught in life. And really, it's not anything crazy. It's just the idea that when we were in high school and our youth pastors were 24, 25 years old, maybe they didn't know everything. Maybe they taught us some stuff that was a little bit off and we need to question. Um, but I want to read this quote from the book because this really resonated with me. I've noticed that people don't realize how their beliefs and what they accept as true or not shapes their lives. The teaching that acceptance is recognition, not resignation, is a good place to begin because once something is recognized, it's available for change, uh, reinterpretation, revolution, and for demonstration once it's been explored. That's like my that's the definition of my life right now. Like
Oh, wow.
once I recognized that maybe not everything I thought was true or not true was up for grabs, then I just started looking and at everything. And so that quote really, to me, that was like, oh, okay. I totally this is the purpose of the podcast. This is the purpose of my deconstruction. This is the purpose of everything. For me, it was Broadway theater. That was the thing. I describe it as if you're wandering lost in the woods, you don't know you're lost until you see something that looks out of place, that looks out of order, and then you realize that you're lost. But before that moment, you didn't even know you were lost, even though you were.
Yeah.
And Broadway theater has really been that thing for me. Um, is that as you're life coaching, as you're working with people, is that something that resonates that people don't like this quote, things they accept as true or not true really um, determines how they're living life?
Absolutely. Your beliefs definitely determine how you live your life. And and oftentimes people don't realize they're doing it, but they try to prove, you try to prove your beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So if you believe something negative about yourself, you kind of filter everything through that filter.
Mm,
Basically people tend to gather evidence to support the story they tell themselves about themselves. So
hmm.
if somebody like doesn't call you back, or if somebody says something that you interpret as not positive, it's that filter. It's easy to tell yourself, well, there's something wrong with me,
Right. When it could be
right?
a thousand other things.
A thousand other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you know so it's very, I asked a client yesterday because I knew I was doing this podcast today, and so I just asked a client what was like what she's getting out of working together.
Hmm.
And she said that basically that the feedback helps her recognize where she's not being true to herself.
Yeah.
And that's really valuable because it's so easy to fool yourself and to adapt instead of create,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to read another quote because I loved this quote about the idea of God being an interactive field to play in. I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
And it says, instead of playing the field and allowing themselves to be guided, earthlings are driven to live in a static structure they call life. They move along a nice little conveyor belt laid out for them. Along the way, their choices direct the conveyor belt, giving the appearance of freedom. I have been contemplating it since the download of information. It is a rabbit hole. Um, See, these are the things that I'm like, this is a TED talk. This is the dialogue. The dialogue has so much substance to it. Um, where did this idea come from? This idea of an interactive field, that we're on conveyor belts, that we're not living the way that we're supposed to be living. When did that start to pop up in your head?
Well, I think it started when I was a kid because, like
Mm.
I mentioned earlier, having to go to school or, being told what to do every day. And, there's an accepted, like in school, you're not taught how to think, you're taught what to think.
Mm.
And then, the accepted life, trajectory is you go to school, kindergarten through, and preschool through 12th grade, then you go to college, then you get a job, then you work for so ever long, and then you retire when you're 65, and then you get to enjoy whatever.
Right.
That's kind of the trajectory of what's presented. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't work that way and are entrepreneurs, and like myself, I kind of jumped off that train.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've thought about it for years because I never wanted to conform to that. Ever since I just never, it never interested me. Like
Yeah.
I didn't go to college so much. I took some classes here and there, but I didn't go to a 4-year school and get a degree. I I worked in rock and roll nightclubs and comedy clubs, and I managed comedians, and I, went into life, like I've just done cooked for Jesuit priests and
Hmm.
had a personal chef business in LA. So I've just done a lot, I like to keep life interesting, and I think, and I've moved over 70 times since I turned 18.
Wow.
And people ask me, how can you move so much? And I'm like, how can you stay in one place for so long? I just, there's just so much to do and see. And even if you move in a different part of your city,
Right.
you're having a different experience.
Right. Do you feel like, I mean, we're coming up against that reality like all the time though. Don't you think? Like even in putting out a book, you do something with the creativity of writing this book, and then it's like, okay, now you get on the conveyor belt of finding a publisher and releasing the book, and then you have to have social media. I run into the same thing doing a podcast. I love this hour that I get to spend with you. I hate every other aspect of the podcast.
Here, here. I'm with you 100%. That's the thing, you think that you've accomplished such a great, oh my God, I've climbed the mountain, I've finished my book. And that's like, nope.
Yeah,
And
that's just the beginning.
it is, and and that's why it sat on the shelf for 7 years. I finished it in 2017, and there was a good chance it wasn't going to get published because I sent it out to a few publishers here and there and got some nice. But again, what you're talking about, you have to dot your I's and cross your T's and not put anything wrong in the letter, or else you're going to the rejection pile without even any merit. Not based on any merit, just based on your
Right.
maybe typing a wrong, hitting a wrong key.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I've, we bump up against it everywhere,
Yeah.
and so there, I feel like there's really no escaping it, but at the same time, I tend to listen to the field, and,
Yeah.
intention is very powerful. And I think, and a lot of times, I mean, this is related. A lot of times people ask for something, like they want more pay. Like, I mean, this is an example. Is like, sometimes, like I said, okay, God, I want more patience.
Yeah.
Can I please, give me more patience? And then later that day, I went to a restaurant. It took 45 minutes to get seated. And then and then once we get seated, the waitress didn't come for 45 minutes. And that's actually me getting the opportunity to, to embody more patience.
Yeah.
But if I don't see it that way, then, I'm just pissed off. Like, and so what I have noticed in my life is I'll ask for a quality or for something to happen, and then the life rolls out, giving me the opportunity to experience and to see the places where I don't have that and to operate
Mm,
differently.
yeah. Yeah. Less about less about changing your circumstances, more about seeing your circumstances from a different angle, maybe different lens.
Yeah, yeah. And, and recognizing that, wow, I asked for this.
Hmm.
I want, and, you know, I heard recently, ABC, action before change,
Yeah.
which, right.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to want to wait until you feel a particular way to do something differently, whereas doing something differently is going to, make you feel a different way.
I mean, you're describing my life. That's something I struggle with so bad. That's something I struggle with so bad. It's like the man, I'm not sleeping well. But once I start sleeping well, I'll eat better and I'll work out. But eating better and working out would help me sleep better.
Right? Yeah. And about eating better, so often, it's easy to look at like what I need to take away
Hmm.
from how I eat. I mean, I just recently quit eating sugar, and I'll tell you, it's amazing the difference. I love it. I'm
Yeah.
pretty happy about it. Um, but it's not necessarily what you take away. It's just if you bring in the good stuff and just have it available,
Hmm.
then and just kind of lean towards the good stuff,
Yeah.
um, rather than feeling deprived.
Sure, sure. Going back to this idea of the conveyor belt that we all live on, I think I can definitely like point to times in my life where I've felt it. I can feel it in my own life now in certain ways, but I never like felt it with a strong intensity as much as I do. My daughter just turned 10 and she's like totally discovering who she is and what she's good at. And what she's good at is clearly creative. Um, she can draw, she can write stories, she can do all these things. And yet every day I send her to school from 9 to 3 where she does mostly math and she hates it. Where they have art like one for an hour every other week, and just I see this conveyor belt that I'm putting her on every day because this is what you're supposed to do. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's the best thing for her. But these are the traps that we like run into. These are the conveyor belts that we just get on and ride. And I feel it like with an intensity for her. And I want to figure out how to let her play in the field more?
And even that recognition and knowing that might could pop up some opportunities that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because you have that awareness, maybe there's other schools she could go to, or another way that you can arrange for her to do that, where she's nurtured in the things that fulfill her
Right.
more.
Right.
There
Well, the
was this.
summer the summer's nice because right now as we talk, she's at art camp. So
Oh, perfect.
the summer's good because we can plan all the art camps that we want.
That's fantastic
Yeah.
that she
You
gets to
mentioned that the
plan.
book took 9 years, and I'm really interested in that because I've been working on a musical for just about the same amount of time. How did you finish? well, why did it take 9 years, and then how did you finally get it done?
Well, it took 9 years because I kind of have an attention span issue sometimes, but also because I wrote the first 80 page. I was having trouble finding the point of view
Mm,
and how to weave together the three stories that are actually kind of woven together in there.
yeah,
And so I wrote 80 pages and threw it out, which was not easy to do, but I realized that it just didn't have the right point of view. Then I wrote another 35 and threw it out. And then I finally got the point of view and did and could move forward from there.
Hmm.
And, I was working, and I, and I had to keep myself sitting at the computer to writing it. Now I'm, kind of grappling with starting the second book and writing the second book. And so it's all coming up again. Like, how am I going to do this? Right.
Hmm.
Um,
A
but
sequel or a different story?
it's the continuation of this story.
Continuation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
And or maybe write the book of laws, actually.
Mm.
It might be both at the same time simultaneously.
Yeah.
But the way I finished it was I just kept going. I just
Hmm.
kept going, and there was a distinct ending point, which I won't say what it is in the book, but that happened in my life. And
Mm.
so that was a nice point to stop the story, with the understanding that once I publish it, I would probably write the second book, or to start the second book. So yeah, I just
Right.
kept going. And like, one of the ways that, do you have trouble staying and seating and writing, or like once you get into it, can you stay and focus? How is that for you?
Yeah. Once I get into it, I can stay in focus. Um, we should have Barbara on to really talk about all this, but because I've been working with her on it.
That would be fun.
I mean, it's just like crippling self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all that stuff that keeps me from even like sitting down to start. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
do.
those are the things that I deal with more than anything.
Like, who am I to write this play, kind of thing, or
Yeah,
or or to live my life that I want?
yeah, and I've like, I came from sports background and kind of found musical theater later in life. So it's definitely like a who am I? And I totally idolize the people who do get to do it. And like there's no way I could ever be Tim Minchin or Lin-Manuel Miranda or any of these guys that do it. Who am I to be able to do that, to be in that room? You know what I mean? So I mean I could go weeks with those thoughts. And as you said, I take every piece of evidence in as confirming those thoughts, and it becomes really big hard walls to break down for sure.
Right. And so you're, gathering evidence for, why you can't do it. But what if
Yeah.
you were gathering evidence for why you can do it? Because it's your unique experience. And, you don't really, I mean, I hear what you're saying for sure, and I understand it, but like, you don't want to be Lynn Emmanuel. You want to be you, putting
Yeah.
yourself out there. And I totally get that.
Totally. Yeah. I know
Yeah.
I know all the things.
Yeah. But it's,
Believing all the things
yeah.
is the hard part.
And so you
Also,
just keep
there's
going.
just
So how far
something.
are you in it? Are you almost, are
I
you
have drafts, I have outlines. I'm poking away, poking away.
like completed drafts?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm well along. I have a story. It's all thought out. It's just typing it out at this point. But
Oh, okay.
and probably I would imagine having released a book now, you feel the same way. Um, in the arts now, it feels like there's no clear path to follow. Like when I'm done with it, there isn't the company to submit it to. There isn't like you know what I mean? Like it just feels so nebulous. Then you just kind of start doing readings and put it out into the world. And I have contacts and I have things like that, but what do you do with it once you finish it? And those thoughts keep me from finishing.
You know, I since I finished the novel, and the path to getting, to self-publishing it, um, yeah, there's no main, I totally agree with you. There's no main, even news and everything that we get, there's no main source of information. And there's so many, but you said you have contacts, and so it's like, what is it what would it take to just finish and go through? And what if nothing ever happens with it? See, that's the thing that was with me and my novel,
Yeah.
is if nothing ever happened with it, I would have been satisfied just because I finished it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really so it wasn't necessarily about getting it out into the world. And the way that it ended up getting out into the world was synchronistic events that happened that, I mean, if those things didn't happen, I wouldn't have done it because I wasn't hell bent on publishing it. I would have been fine not publishing it.
Yeah.
But what happened was, I mean, I can tell you the synchronistic events that happened. And synchronicity, as you know, is part of the story. Like one of the things in there is that people should, be paying more attention when they're not seeing synchronicities than when they are seeing them, because that's the way this place work. It's kind of like an interaction with the field. The field is, and all you have to do is wink or acknowledge that something happened that,
Right.
and this is so last summer, I spent the last year traveling around the Pacific Northwest, pet sitting,
Mm.
uh, in different cities. I'd never been here before, and I left Colorado in October of 2022, and then traveled around for a year and a quarter. And um, and one of the things, a friend of mine has a place on Denman Island, which is an island off the coast of Vancouver Island in Canada. And
Hmm.
there was the Denman Writers Conference. And so I figured, all right, I've got this book. They had a self-publishing workshop. And I figured, oh, great. I'll go to the self-publishing workshop. I'll learn everything I need to do. And it'll really inspire me to just like, oh, yes, I'm going to do this. And I went to the workshop and I left going, that's too much work. Forget that. I'm not down. I don't even know what I want to put on the cover. I don't know, I don't know anything. I don't have the oomph to do it. And then like a month later, somebody referred me to do a house sit in LA for a tortoise, actually. These people were going to Europe and they didn't, I guess the tortoise would have been fine without me, but
Yeah.
they just didn't want their house empty for a month.
Someone's got to give them lettuce.
Right, or hibiscus flowers. No,
Oh,
actually,
wow, bougie.
here's something, I said, what, does he eat lettuce? No, you never give a tortoise lettuce. I'm like, okay, all right, I didn't know.
Okay.
But there was a little library down the street from, the little libraries on the block, and I went and there was this book in there, and it was just a small book, and I took it out and I read it, and it was like somebody's spiritual treatise from the University of Santa Monica, but she published it as a book, and she thanked um, the book cover zone in it, which is a place where they have pre-designed book covers that you can customize for your novel, for your books.
Hmm.
And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. And so I went on and and there was this the book cover that you see on there. I can
Hmm.
hold it up. The I have one right here. Just happen to have in the book. Yeah, the
Yeah.
book cover, which when I saw this book cover, I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect
Mm.
for this book, right? And so I had to buy it before somebody else did, because once you buy it, it's yours, right? And so that I was like, okay, now I've got like, if I'm going to do this, now's the time. And so I felt like that was synchronistic events of like leading me to the thing, learning about the book cover, and I knew what I needed to do to self-publish
Sure.
because I took that workshop. So the next thing I did was just call my editor and ask her about laying out the book for, it's a different layout for ebook and for soft
Sure.
cover.
Yeah.
She agreed to do the layout, which was amazing. I was very fortunate because I'd probably still be laying it out if it was me doing it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I get that. I literally I have everything that I need. Everything that I
Yeah.
need has been placed around me. I just have to, if you want like this is like turning into not a podcast anymore, but like a free coaching session. Um,
It's all
uh,
good. It's
if
all
you
good.
want like the deep internal truth that I've realized about why I don't finish is if I don't finish, I could always say I could have, but if I finish and failed, then I have to say that I failed. And at least saying I could have is like something positive to hold on to me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But if I finish and it doesn't work, then I have to say that I failed. And that's worse than to me in my brain than saying I could have.
And I just am curious, what is failing? What is failing in that scenario?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
That's a good question to ask yourself,
yeah, for sure. For sure.
right? Because
Yeah.
finishing it is accomplishing something right there. So, but then there's the next piece of, wanting to get it put up somewhere.
Right. Right. Well, and then my expectations are too high. I mean, for success, like Tony Award is like anything less than Tony Award is like why even do it? Which there's a myriad of things in my life that could lead us down that road also. But let's get back to the book. Because I have another quote that I want to read that I want to get your perspective on.
Okay.
And it's about the field, actually. The quote is: "So Earth is an interactive, creative environment designed to be a journey of self discovery, fueled by simply following clues," which we just talked about. "Every living thing participates as a part of Earth's built in interactive clue system: plants, animals, bird, earthlings, smells, sounds, everything." Um, what do you do personally to connect to these things, to find those clues? Is it going for walks? Is it being in nature? Is it just being aware in your everyday life? What is what does that mean to you?
I do walk a lot. I pay attention to I love the word glimmers. It's such a beautiful word, right? Glimmers, the glimmers, the internal glimmers and guidance. And like, for instance, something guided me to pick that book, the book that I picked out of and so I follow the guidance that I receive
Hmm.
and pay attention to it. And, and, sometimes you'll have a thought, it seems like you, oftentimes people could call it coincidences, right?
Yeah.
Um, but but we're in an interactive space. And also I have a really solid meditation practice,
Hmm.
so that helps me to recognize the observer of my thoughts. If that
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um uh do you meditate at all? Do you?
No.
No.
No, I should.
um it's help I find it to be very helpful in terms of mind, because our minds can just take our minds have been strengthened through our education system, like we're talking about, and like to help me drop into my heart and to just listen and interact in the world in a different way.
Yeah.
And you were talking earlier in this podcast about Jesus and what you learned when you were growing up, right? And
Yeah.
about um I, I'm taking this class through the Shift Network called the Aramaic Jesus.
Hmm.
And this man Neil Plus, I think, I don't that might not be his right name. He translates Jesus's words directly from Aramaic. And you were talking about, maybe what we were taught isn't actually what is real. And
Sure.
it's blowing my mind, actually, how in alignment what I wrote is with what he's teaching.
Mm.
um and the actual definitions of the words that um were in Aramaic, the Aramaic translations. um and we're going through the Lord's Prayer, which is completely different than how it's been translated. It's really mind-blowing, actually.
Mm.
um and so, yeah, so just in terms of connecting with the field, but like right now there's a whole bunch of crows going crazy outside, so I just hear them and just listen. But yeah, I just pay attention. And
Yeah.
and tiny thoughts or glimmers or thoughts or intentions put balls in motion.
Yeah. Yeah.
in the field. And, and I also think that, I have this note in my wallet that says, every interaction is a message to the field. um it's mechanical. It's not even spiritual necessarily. It's mechanical, that's the way this place works in
Mm.
my mind. So if I accept somebody treating me poorly, then the field doesn't want you to be, and the field is neutral.
Mm.
You kind of, you interact with it. And so if I accept somebody treating me poorly and keep on doing that, then that's what I'm going to keep getting, because it's what I'm accepting, right? And so it's what is going to get delivered.
Yeah.
And once I start to practice not doing that, then a different quality experience will happen, because I'm not accepting it. And it's the same thing, back to, gathering evidence to support the story you tell yourself about yourself. It's a really great, opportunity and practice to recognize when you're doing that.
Hmm.
And so, if one of my core issues was, I don't matter. And, based on how I was
Hmm.
raised, and being adopted and all this different stuff.
Hmm.
And um, so if I'm filtering everything through I don't matter, then that's going to be a different experience than, than filtering it through I have I'm, I'm worthy of life and
Yeah.
of being here
Yeah.
and of showing and of speaking. Publishing the book was kind of scary, because it is autobiographical, and they're, semi-autobiographical, obviously.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories in there are true,
Yeah.
actually happened to me. And this is the first, I just recently this week started to realize, not that it's semi-autobiographical, but that it's an important part of letting people know that it's semi-autobiographical. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
I just
feel
like to
like
talk about it in that way.
um what are you hoping people walk away with after reading the book? I can tell you what I walked away with.
Okay, I'd
Um
love to hear it.
I feel that there's part of there's part of it that made me feel like it's the Matrix, in turn, like take the blue pill or the red pill. It feels like the idea of the Matrix for people who don't like guns or black leather to me. Like that's
I love that. I love that so much.
if you like the idea of like thinking of the world completely differently and like unplugging from the system without the guns and black leather, then this is the book for you. Um,
I love
but
that.
there's I had a very like maybe my most profound spiritual moment ever in my life was watching the musical Pippin. Are you familiar with Pippin?
I,
Um,
I've heard of it, and I'm not 100% sure the story.
yeah, so it's a character trying to decide what is important in life. And the version that I saw, the version that happens is it's in a big circus tent and he goes through this whole thing and um at the end of the musical, everything gets stripped away. He's learned his lesson, and there's like a ringmaster that's part of this whole thing. And he walks off the stage, and his young son is still there on the stage, and the ringmaster rolls the ball to the young son, meaning everyone has to go on this journey themselves. Now it's time for this young son to figure out the same things. Everyone has to go on this journey, and I felt the same after reading the book that there was like a call to start the journey yourself. Um, is that what you're hoping for to happen? What are you hoping for people to get out of this book as they read it?
I'm hoping for people to recognize that what has been accepted as life, there's so much more to it. And that
Mm,
this planet, there's such a rich tapestry of experiences, and that we're in a playground. here, and that you can only go on the journey yourself, absolutely.
Hmm.
And that you do have a choice. It's really, I think it comes down to the matter of choice and how your beliefs really do form your experience in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's
Um,
societal stuff, and there's other, it's not like Pollyanna-ish like that, but
mhm.
but really that, you know, I'm like, what's coming to me right now is like you have more control than you think, but it's not necessarily control. It's just like it's that we live in an interactive space, and that God is not that there isn't some big guy in the sky with white hair. I mean, that's a really big thing for me, is because it never made sense to me that, you know, I've always thought, and I think I say this in the book at some place, that what a great, way to control people, to put some invisible guy in the sky that watches you and that punishes you when you sin.
Yeah.
If you really, if people really start to look at some of the stuff they believe, because it's been passed down from generation to generation to generation, and really question it, you go, wait a minute, what's that? You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. The other part of the book that I found interesting coming from a Christian background is just the idea of ego taking it and rewriting it. Um, to me, even within Christianity, that happens every day. Even if you took the book as a good, perfect thing, there are pastors, there are people that are taking and rewriting it for their own purposes every day. And then
Yeah.
claiming that as truth, passing it on to their kids, it becomes generational. And all of a sudden, like we have these generational things, even within Christianity that believes the Bible, where they've completely rewritten it into something that's oftentimes no longer good news, no longer a good God anymore. I thought that was really interesting also. Um, I want to direct people to what you're doing. Where can people find the book, find you, follow you, do all those things?
So awesome. Thank you. My website is amyglin.com, and that's amyglin.com.
Mhm.
And the book is available on Amazon, and I'm on Instagram, Amy Glin Coaching, and those are I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, but those are all with my name, Amy Glin.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just real quick, describe the coaching for me if anyone is interested in that. What is the coaching for? What specifically do you work with people?
Yeah, I work with people I do a process called body, mind, spirit braiding. And what it is basically is I kind of facilitate a conversation between my client and their subconscious,
Mm,
to kind of unearth the wounds and the the stuffed, triggers and unhealed wounds that can guide our lives unknowingly. And there's something called the 90-10 rule. And the 90-10 rule is that when there's a range of there's some people say three, some people say five main emotions. There's different camps on all this.
mm-hmm,
But there's happy, sad, scared, hurt, and another one, angry.
mm-hmm,
And so, say on and with anger, you could have, you could be, oh, I'm mad at you. You could be, I'm livid. What did you do? So there's a range of emotion on everything. And so when a person's reaction to something is out of proportion to the event,
mm,
like say a shopping cart hits you in a grocery store, like one person will say, oh, don't worry about it. Another person will say, what are you doing hitting me with your shopping cart? What's wrong? Like that.
sure.
So that 90% of that overblown reaction is from the past, and
Mm,
10% is from the present, right?
yeah.
So you're triggered. So something's got triggered in you, and I call that a reference point. So the reference point goes back to the childhood experience or the wound that where you didn't get your need met.
Hmm.
And it happens all over the place, right? I mean, look everywhere. And so when you can communicate with those stuck places within you and just, just being with them and listening to them and interacting and getting the voice that's actually stifled within you, and inviting it to mature to present day time can kind of reset that reference point. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, so that's the crux of that work. And then I just do general coaching with people. I've done so many I've created products, and I've worked so much on myself to get myself happy being on the planet that I kind
Hmm.
of know the paths, and I can hear and basically what I do is ask you questions so you can see your thought patterns within yourself.
Right.
And I'm not telling you anything about yourself because you know you better than I do.
Sure.
Um, but you can fool yourself, like we were saying earlier. And so, how do you I help you kind of unpack
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the places where you're stuck.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for doing this podcast slash coaching session with me.
Eric, this has been so
uh
much fun. I love talking with you.
yeah, so it's a pleasure meeting you, and we'll get a link to the book on all the socials and do all that stuff. I hope all tens of my listeners check it out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's just a pleasure meeting. And maybe I think I'm gonna be in LA the end of July. Maybe we can grab a tea or something.
Yeah, fun. That'd be awesome. Thank you
That'd be
so
fun, huh?
much.
All right, thanks.